Well, I hope if you're in a dynasty fantasy football league, you drafted a running back last year, because this running back class really is as bad as everybody says. Now, that's not to say there aren't a handful of players that I'm really excited to talk about here for today's running back rankings for the 2026 NFL Draft. It's more just like, not everybody's going to get one, right? There's only 3 players in this draft that I like before day 3 of the draft. If anybody says I'm too positive with these classes or thought I was using recency bias when I said that this wide receiver class is one of the best I've ever seen, well, this video is evidence that that's certainly not always the case. This is actually one of the worst individual position group classes that I've ever done in the 7 years that I've been doing draft content on this channel. But if anything, it makes it maybe more interesting to know who are the guys that you really want your team to end up with in April's draft. So we are going to do this one a little bit differently than my other positional rankings video just because of that nature of this draft. We're actually going to start at the top, spoiler alert, with Jeremiah Love. And then we're going to go down through the rankings. For our first 6 running backs, I'll give you that nice deep dive with the cut-ups and the full-on graphics with all these guys. And then I'm actually going to tell you about 13 running backs today. Running backs 7 through 13 are going to be more of a little bit of a quick cut snapshot look into some of the other running backs in this draft. But this should be fun. Let's go ahead and get started with the number 1 running back in the 2026 NFL Draft. It is no surprise. It is Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. And if you Jeremiah love this video, make sure you hit that like button down below and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my positional rankings for the 2026 NFL Draft, mock drafts, you name it. But let's dive into just how special Jeremiah Love is. And when I say that this running back class is bad, obviously we're not talking about top-end talent, because Jeremiah Love is, man, everyone throws a fit when you say the word generational. I would just say Jeremiah Love is up there for the conversation for who the best running back prospects have been over the last 10 years or so. He has been brought into conversations with guys like Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Ashton Jinty. I would actually stack Love 4th in that group, but I understand why those conversations are being had with Jeremiah Love. And at the end of the day, he is as good as advertised. He is the truth. He is easily worth a top 10 pick in any draft, let alone this draft that is not just thin at running back, but it's thin in terms of other blue chip talent as well. So I do expect he comes off the board in the top 10 picks or so. Maybe he slips a little bit past that just because, some teams value running back more than others, to say the least. But he's the type of talent that when he goes very high in the draft, it's going to be pretty hard to nitpick it, because you're getting a blue chip talent, someone that you expect within a few years to be like an all-pro talent and in the conversation for who the best running backs in the NFL are. So he is absolutely of that caliber, even if there are a few reasons that I'll talk about towards the end of his analysis for why he came in a little bit lower than guys like even Ashton Jinty last year, but Bijan and Saquon going back years ago. But let's start with the positive. I mean, the first thing I think everybody gets really excited about with Jeremiah Love is probably the most overrated trait at the running back position that people, I think, overvalue at times, and that is long speed. But if you have so much of the other stuff, it is really nice to drop 4.36 speed on top of everything, because it's actually really rare that most of these running backs get to tap into their top speed because maybe their vision isn't as great or they're not making guys miss to get into that second and third level. Well, as we're going to talk about, Jeremiah Love does all that other stuff, and then he can absolutely be off to the races. So he checks that very fun box of premium long speed and checked it in Indianapolis with that 4.36 40. But honestly, when I think about Jeremiah Love, that's not the first thing that comes to mind for me. I think of the rare combination of vision and elusiveness that he has at his size. So you're always looking for a back with his vision that has that ideal blend of patience and knowing when to press the hole and when to go. And Jeremiah Love, for the vast majority of his carries, shows that. They ran every concept in the book at Notre Dame, so there are concepts where he needs to press the hole. hit it hard, clear that gap in a hurry. And then there's concepts with pullers in front of him or inside zone where he's got an opportunity to show a little bit more patience, to let blocks set up, to anticipate pursuing angles from the second level and really manipulate that kind of stuff. He has a really good foundation with his vision. It's not always perfect. With a guy that is such a home run threat, he is on the prowl and looking for those bounce out opportunities. I wouldn't describe Jeremiah Love as bounce happy, but maybe once every 2 or 3 games, he'll bounce a run outside that wasn't really there, and he'll leave some meat on the bones of the occasional run. And sometimes he can be a little bit too patient at times, but you're talking about little footnotes throughout the course of a game, maybe once every week or so, where his vision isn't necessarily perfect, but I do describe Love as having very, very good vision, and he's still young. He still only has 500 career touches, by the way, so the vision can get better, and I like the 500 touch thing because you don't want these guys to have too much tread worn off the tire when they come in, and the fact that he did split carries with Jadarian Price is just another positive for Jeremiah Love, but he checks the vision box, and then you talk about the rare elusiveness that he has at his size. It's kind of why Jeremiah Love is so hard to place a pro comp on. You hear a lot of people say Jahmyr Gibbs. Honestly, he reminds me a lot of LaShawn McCoy at times. But those guys aren't 6 foot, 214 pounds. He plays very similar, especially to like a LaShawn McCoy. I see so much of that in Jeremiah Love's game, but how do you compare him to LaShawn McCoy when he's, an inch and a half taller and packing about 15 more pounds on him? It's tough. My ultimate pro comp on Jeremiah Love is Christian McCaffrey, but even that's not a perfect pro comp. He doesn't have the receiving complexities of Christian McCaffrey as he did coming out, and I think he's a little faster than Christian McCaffrey, but he's some blend of all these guys just with a little bit more size, and it's really special. So yeah, you've got the jump cuts, you've got the spin moves, the change of direction, and foot speed. It's special with Jeremiah Love. It doesn't take very long for anybody to watch a highlight reel and realize, yeah, this guy's going to be really fun to watch with his ability to make guys miss in space and the creativity he has as a runner as well. Now, I mentioned the McCaffrey comp and said his receiving chops aren't quite what Christian McCaffrey's were coming out. That's obviously like rare territory. I don't know that we'll ever get someone like Christian McCaffrey who could just also be the best slot wide receiver prospect in the draft if he wanted to be that coming out. But that's not to say Jeremiah Love doesn't grade out really well as a receiving back prospect. Notre Dame would occasionally line him up in the slot, and he showed some really nice wiggle and route running within his routes, and he's got good hands. He makes tough catches. I think he can get even better as a pass blocker. I think he's workable for now because he does have some size and willingness. So I don't entirely hate the receiving game side of things with the Christian McCaffrey comp either. I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that you can use Jeremiah Love as much more than just a running back. I think you can move him around the formation and do a lot of the creative stuff that we've seen Kyle Shanahan especially tap into with a Christian McCaffrey, or what the Lions have done with Jahmyr Gibbs, for example. Don't mean to obsess about the pro comp. It's just been a very fascinating conversation for those tuned into the Jeremiah Love conversation, because it's a tough player to come up with a pro comp on. But I do think, especially as a runner, Christian McCaffrey, who won Offensive Rookie of the Year, he has spent years as one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the NFL before you even talk about the receiving chops. I do see a guy that has remarkable explosiveness, vision, and elusiveness as a runner, with a similar overall size profile to Christian McCaffrey. Pound for pound, it's pretty close. McCaffrey's just about an inch and a half shorter. Now, I do want to end with just a couple of the areas with Jeremiah Love that I don't want to say I was underwhelmed by, but were more like non-strengths in his game and are what led to me leading with that opening statement of I did have a higher grade on Ginty and Bijan and Saquon. And it's that his overall power profile is just okay. He is a little bit of a higher cut back. His ankles are a little bit thinner. His contact balance really isn't anything close to what certainly Bijan and Ginty's were. And because he is often moving so fast, a nice cut at the ankles can get him to be a little top heavy and fall over. And also just like the power profile, the ability to muscle up a defender for a must-have yard. It's in there. He can do it. And sometimes it requires him to just kind of get skinny and reach the ball out and be a little bit more savvy to get that tough yard. But he doesn't really have that full power profile on top of the explosive ability that I think some of those other generational level backs also had. And that's totally fine, right? I would say the same thing about Christian McCaffrey, my pro comp. I would say the same thing about Jahmyr Gibbs, and hasn't held those guys back from being all pro caliber running backs either. So that's the eval on Jeremiah Love. An easy place to start as we're starting this video with my number 1 running back. Now, before we stay at Notre Dame and go to my number 2 running back, I want to thank the sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek. Guys, SeatGeek is the number 1 ticketing app out there, and for good reason. With opening day for the MLB just around the corner, NBA and NHL are approaching the end of their seasons, and the weather's getting nicer. So if you want to go see a concert, SeatGeek has got you covered for all of your ticketing needs. They have the best app, the best user interface. Green means good, red means bad. Just look for those green dots. You know you'll be getting the best value, not just on the SeatGeek app, but always market competitive prices as well. They will give you images of exactly what your seat's going to look like. So if you've never been to that stadium or that venue, or you've never sat in that section, you want to know what the view is going to look like. They do a great job of opening up that window to what your experience is going to look like. You get the tickets right there in the SeatGeek app. You don't have to jump through email chains or track down third-party vendors and have this stressful experience as you approach the gate. When I'm looking for tickets, I do it on SeatGeek, and they've been a great partner to work with over the years as well, so you can show some love back to them and for the channel. When you use code TFG10 at checkout, you will save up to $20 on your next purchase on top of everything I just said. So thank you to SeatGeek. That's code TFG10 at checkout. And let's get to my number 2 running back. Like I hinted at, we're staying at Notre Dame with Jadarian Price. And I was excited to watch Price because all of the talk is, wow, this running back class is so bad. And I thought it could lead to maybe people reaching a little bit to find who's the next guy in this draft. So I wasn't sure where I was going to land on Jadarian Price, knowing that, and he backed up Jeremiah Love and all that. And I think he's legit, man. I think as a second-round running back prospect, someone that can be a really good quality starter in the NFL, I don't think this is manufacturing a grade on a guy just to find an RB2 in this draft. I really like Jadarian Price. Now, he would still be RB7 in last year's draft because last year's draft was so insane, but I do still have a firm second-round grade on Jadarian Price. Now, if you've been following the overall conversations on the draft, I think you've noticed, people like Jadarian Price, but there's not, this insane amount of hype for him. And I think that's because when you watch his film, he's just not the most crazy dynamic or exciting running back. I tweeted this out, but he kind of has, and this has nothing to do with the Notre Dame connection, but he kind of has a little bit of that Kyren Williams to him where he's really smooth. He's got incredible vision. He is much more about out manipulating angles and setting guys up and leaning into his incredible change of direction ability than he is, gonna run through a tackle with power or gonna make you miss with this crazy jump cut like his teammate Jeremiah Love will. I like to describe him as an oily runner with outstanding vision and an understanding of angles. And he's more of a weaver through the defense than he is going to cut through you like a knife. And while it might not pass the eye test as much, I think this style is equally effective. And he did it week in, week out. You talk about the same thing we said with Jeremiah Love, where the vision is just so good. I mean, you could tell these guys have been coached in the same backfield together. They're very similar in the sense of that perfect blend of patience when you need it and ability to go when you need to go. And I would argue that Jadarian Price has an even more consistent balance of that. And he's able to see those bounce out lanes when they're there, but he doesn't seek them out. Like I would say even Jeremiah Love at times is like, maybe, I don't know if he's going into the play with it or the play happens and that's how he feels, but there's plays where Jeremiah Love is like, I'm going to hit a home run on this play. And a lot of times he does. But sometimes it's a bad decision to bounce something out. I think maybe once on Jadarian Price's tape, he bounced a run outside, and I thought it was a bad decision to do that. So he doesn't seek out those bounce out lanes. If it's a well-blocked run and he can show patience or he can hit a hole hard, he's going to do that. But if the slot corner or the outside linebacker blows contain, he will see it, process that quickly, and he's got really easy hips, excellent acceleration, good enough speed to get that corner and really make the defense pay. So I just love the fluid athletic ability paired with the vision. It screams Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, those two guys with the Rams. He's cut from the exact same cloth. Really good, efficient, savvy runners that maybe don't break a lot of tackles or blow you away with their traits. The pro comp I did end up going with, though, is another guy that was always pretty similar in Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers, because I think Jones had a little bit more speed than like Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. And likewise with Aaron Jones, was never the most elusive or powerful running back. It was much more about vision, acceleration, pretty good speed, and out-angling opponents. So I see a very similar player there. And man, Aaron Jones in the second round, you will take that every day of the week. The one area there that's a little bit more of a question mark is Jadarian Price was just never used as a receiving back. I think he had like 3 or 4 catches every year because they had Jeremiah Love, right? And Love consumed so much gravity in the receiving game there. So I just have, no grades on Jadarian Love as a route runner, as a pass catcher. There's just such a small sample size there. I think he can do it. And there's kind of a little bit of that exciting fog of war where, can he be more of like an Austin Eckler type of guy where he actually is a really good runner, but maybe surprises us with just how good he could be as a receiving back? That's more of a leap of faith, not anything based on the film. But obviously with the Aaron Jones comp, that was something that Aaron Jones was spectacular at as well, as being that pass catcher out of the backfield. So much more TBD on that with Jadarian Price, but really nice fluid player. I think he's going to be a quality starter. I think he probably lands somewhere in the top 8 to 15 range of running backs in the NFL someday, and probably going to be well worth about a top 50 pick in this draft. And then things get really interesting because those are the consensus top 2. We think Price is going to go around where I described. And then it turns into a total crapshoot. It is genuinely eye-opening to have a draft class that in that late second and third round range is a wasteland. Because honestly, like the last 5 years, it feels like that's been a sweet spot where it's like, oh, just take that year's third round running back. He's going to be a nice starter for you. There's no consensus opinion on who that guy is after Love and Price. So when I went in to watch this class, I was really hoping that at least somebody would emerge to me as someone that I really liked the tape and gravitated towards, to be like, all right, let's say we're the Seahawks and we're picking 64th in the draft and we need a running back, but we missed out on Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Who's the guy we can take that we can plug in there and get starting caliber play out of this year? Or even into the third round, who is that guy in this draft class? And a lot of people are going to say it's Jonah Coleman. It's not Jonah Coleman for me. We're going to talk about him later in this video. But there was one guy that did stand out to me, and I let out a sigh of relief of like, okay, at least somebody else in this draft I like and could see being a quality starter in the NFL sooner rather than later. And that player was Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska. And honestly, Emmett Johnson is fairly similar to Jadarian Price. I just didn't think he was quite as explosive and quite as consistent with the vision. But a lot of the same idea where he's not the biggest guy. He's 5'10", 202 pounds. He's not the fastest guy. He ran a 4.56 40, but he understands who he is as a running back, and the vision is very good, and he has all of the requisite acceleration and good enough speed and slipperiness as a runner. He is different in style, whereas Jadarian Price has the speed to kind of win those angles more consistently and weave through the defense. Emmett Johnson is more of that classic make you miss type, where if he meets you in the hole, a linebacker or even, D lineman that penetrated into the backfield, he has really quick feet and creativity with the jump cuts and the spin moves to make guys miss and create. And he's arguably a more fun watch than Jadarian Price if you're looking for more of that exciting running style. But it's all the same underlying idea where he doesn't waste good runs. He sees blocks set up. He can run with patience. He can hit a hole hard. He can see bounce out lanes. Though I will say I wanted to see him find those bounce out lanes that were there on film even more often, because he is a little bit more slippery in space. And I think he could be even more a more explosive runner if his vision cone expanded outside just a little bit more consistently. But overall, I really like the vision and the consistency there, and just really good at, maybe the width with his vision isn't great, but the length of his vision in terms of like seeing guys, safeties and linebackers coming downhill, coming from the second and third level. He's really good at anticipating those, seeing his blockers in front of him, setting them up, and just kind of navigating his way through the muck for bonus yardage. Not with power necessarily, but with jab steps and spins and getting skinny through the hole and running his feet through contact. And while he's a smaller back at 5'10", 202 pounds, he doesn't always go down on first contact. I thought his contact balance was better than you would expect for his listed weight. There's certainly 5'10", 200-pound backs in this draft that don't have as good of contact balance as someone like Emmett Johnson. So it's not that he has no power or no contact balance at all. It's just you're going to be limited in that regard when you're that size. It's just the physics of it. But at the end of the day, I thought the tape was really good. I don't think there's too much left to teach Emmett Johnson. I think the traits are there. The vision will play. The shiftiness should play to a good extent at the next level. And he's a really accomplished receiving back as well. Caught 46 of his 54 targets this year for 370 yards, just one drop. Obviously, that elusiveness plays out in space. He's a good enough athlete to run angle routes and do a little bit more as a receiving entity. So a 3-down presence for you as well. The pass blocking at that size, probably never going to be great, so you probably want him in empty protections out there running routes, being more of a safety outlet for your quarterback as a check down option as opposed to a safety option to protect your quarterback's ass. But like I said, I thought the tape was really good. He was the guy in this draft where I was like, okay, if I don't get Love, if I don't get Price, and I need someone that can come in and get significant work for me in year one, honestly, this was really the only guy in this class that I think has the completeness in his profile after those top two guys. I couldn't find a perfect pro comp for him. Some guys are easier to do that for than others, but honestly, the guy he reminded me the most of was like later career LaShawn McCoy, not in his prime in the Eagles days where he was like, not quite Barry Sanders, but like insanely elusive. Later career LaShawn McCoy, where he still had the same size and running style, but maybe not quite the explosiveness that he once did. That's more of what I saw when I watched Emmett Johnson. So, late second, early third round, very respectable grade here on Emmett Johnson. Kid can play. I like his game. But after Emmett Johnson, man, as far as I've got these guys graded out, we're already into day 3 of the draft with a 4th round grade on my number 4 running back here. And that player is Kaytron Allen out of Penn State. And honestly, going down the board from Price to Emmett Johnson to now Kaytron Allen, they are all kind of similar style running backs. It's just more of a pyramid type system where you're kind of going down a rung in terms of talent level every time. I don't think Emmett Johnson is quite as good of an overall athlete as Jadarian Price, and Katron Allen certainly not as good of an athlete or as shifty as an Emmett Johnson. I think Johnson and Price I can see being lead backs that you're happy with at the next level. Katron Allen, it's like he's got a lot of the same stuff you like in terms of really good vision and getting skinny between tackles and showing the right balance of patience and knowing when to hit the hole. But even his vision, I thought, was a little bit more inconsistent than those top two guys. But he's also very similar to like Jadarian Price in the sense of there's really no tackle breaking going on. There's no creativity as a runner. There's just very poor elusiveness. But of course, Katron Allen doesn't have the fluid hips and the acceleration and the speed to run away from guys. Allen ends up just getting caught from behind, or he tries to make a guy miss and he gets swiped down from his ankles. He's actually kind of a frustrating watch at times because he's so efficient getting what's blocked up for him. He's, coaches are going to like him in the sense of like, there's not a whole lot to teach him. You can plug him in there and he can churn out some tough yards. I like the way he runs his legs through contact. But man, when Allen gets into the open space, there's just not anything to write home about. He's a bit of a higher cut athlete. The ankles are thin, so arm tackles and guys diving at his ankles, they're going to bring him down almost every time. The breakaway speed just isn't very exciting. He's got a little bit more size to him. Like, he can lower his shoulder into a DB and get an extra yard or two, but I wouldn't describe him as a super powerful runner either. It sounds like I'm hating on the guy. It's just that he's not a particularly exciting runner, and that is why he has a 4th round grade, right? I don't think that he's ever going to be a guy that you're like thrilled that he's your number 1 running back. But if he has to be for like a year and you got to give him a bunch of touches and he's not going to suck, I think that can be Katron Allen. He's more of a high floor, low ceiling projection, and that just in this class helped him land as my RB4. And I think my pro comp on Katron Allen leaves it with a bit of a more positive note there. It's J.K. Dobbins. I've always been a little bit lower on just who J.K. Dobbins is as a player, but he's helped a lot of teams in desperate need of a floor at running back, right? Whether that was the Chargers last year or the Broncos this year when he was healthy. Not the most explosive, dynamic guy, not the most powerful runner, but excellent vision, can play through contact, but just not going to have the most prolific highlight reel either. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't be surprised if a team just needs guys that can eat some innings and get some work right away, and they take Katron Allen in the 3rd round. I'm not even going to really knock them if they do, because sometimes you got to just play the hands you're dealt. I think typically speaking, this is more of a early day 3 type of runner, a true like RB2 type of guy to fill in immediately in that role. For me, if you draft a running back in the top 100 picks, I do want a little bit more upside typically with this position group. But again, we've been operating for years on the fact that running back classes are typically extremely deep and easy to find guys. Things are different this year. So we'll see where he ends up ultimately getting drafted. And ultimately, I think Katron Allen is going to be just fine in the NFL, but probably not a guy you're going to like see your friends at school on Monday and be like, oh my God, did you see that game Katron Allen just had? Like, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of that, but he's a very steady, solid, complete back. But now as we get to my number 5 back here, I promise we do now get to some more dynamism, some more upside and explosiveness to get a little bit more excited about. It's just there's a lot more issues with some of these other backs. So my number 5 running back is Seth McGowan out of Kentucky. And he's an easy case of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good speaks for itself. He is a 6 foot, 223 pound running back. Was a highly recruited back that originally went to Oklahoma for a reason. God just didn't make a whole lot of Seth McGowans, right? That are this big, this strong, that have the explosive twitch that he has relative to his size. He doesn't have like 20 pounds lighter, right? And a lot of other big backs can't pick up their feet and jump cut and accelerate the way that Seth's Antonio Gibson at 6 foot, 220 pounds move like that. It's really fun to watch. And that's just naturally going to give him access to some really good explosive runs. He can hit the hole and power through for tough yards. When he's out in space, he's a handful to bring down. He can have that speed on top of all that. So like he's got that agility you look for where his feet are always chopping. So he is physical and runs his feet through contact and picks up difficult yardage that way as well. The good is pretty self-explanatory on Seth McGowan. It's just the traits are really nice, and he's developed pretty well as a running back in terms of vision and understanding and awareness at the position. Now, he doesn't have nearly the consistent vision that our top 4 backs have, right? I think his vision is adequate when he has the physical traits he has, but that's another reason the Antonio Gibson comp comes in, and when we can... if we're doing good, the bad, and the ugly, I would say the bad is more his vision. I know it's counterintuitive because I just said it's developed. Like it's adequate, but compared to these top 4 backs, it's not great. You see a guy that is very bounce happy with his vision. He understands he's a big play threat and he's looking for those big play opportunities. So he will leave a lot of well-blocked runs on the table, bouncing runs outside, and then it's a little more hit or miss in terms of sometimes it's a good call and he gets to the outside and he makes a fool out of the slot corner and he can get you a 20-yard run. Sometimes he tries to bounce it outside and the weak side backer was standing right there and he loses 3 yards. So that doesn't happen every play. Like I said, I think the vision has developed enough where he shows samples of patience and hitting the right hole and running between the tackles, but there's definitely knocks in terms of like that cut discipline and being a little bit, too far on the side of looking to hit home runs too often. He's going to have to find that right balance, or he will be like Antonio Gibson, where it's just Antonio Gibson has really struggled to become the center point of a backfield for that exact reason that I just highlighted on Seth McGowan. And the other thing is, like, a big reason Antonio Gibson's vision was not great is he actually was like a receiver that had converted to running back. So Gibson came with much better receiving chops than Seth McGowan that I would say also falls under the bad. He had a lot of drops. He's not the best in terms of change of direction. He's explosive north and south. He's got really athletic feet in terms of agility, but in terms of turning in his routes and, that kind of stuff, much less dynamic. And as a pass blocker, you want to see him be a lot more consistent as well. He's got the frame to do it, just needs better assignment awareness with that. So we've seen the good, we've seen the quote-unquote bad or room for improvement, and then you got some of the ugly on Seth McGowan. Number one is he's going to have to clear the off-field side of things. He was arrested for a felony early in his career at Oklahoma, got kicked out of Lincoln Riley's program, and he had to have this, maturing, long college career. He went through a litany of schools after getting kicked out of Oklahoma. He goes to Butler Community College, New Mexico State, and now Kentucky. By all accounts, he has matured and has, taken that as a young man, was in a bad place, maybe not surrounded by the best people, and has taken this as a second opportunity at a football career. And I don't actually have character red flags on him. I believe in the idea that you can make a really stupid mistake at 19 years old and grow up, right? Like, I think that is what we've seen, but it is ugly to know that he's been in college for 6 years. He's a 24-year-old prospect, and knowing what led to that, right? So it's a nuanced conversation, of course, but that is something to keep in mind with him, though it doesn't, the felony thing, from what I've heard, that actually doesn't dock the grade. It's more that he's a 24-year-old running back prospect that still has aspects of his game that need to be developed. That's more of the ugly from a evaluation of this player side of things. On top of that, some of the ugly is Finn not as established as a receiving back. He had 5 drops on just 26 targets in 2025. So I think some of the, for me, a 4th to a 5th round grade. I think he's an early day 3 prospect with a lot of upside, can be a really dynamic, probably change of pace back for you. If everything clicks, you could get a really nice starter. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But he is an exciting player, fun guy to watch, and came in as my RB5. Before I do go to my number 6 player, just a couple quick plugs here. I want to remind you guys, I have a merchandise store. That link is in the description below if you want to support the channel and rep TFG out in the wild. I also have a community Discord. If you're on Discord and you want to get in on that, that link is in the description. And then lastly, if you enjoy my player evaluations and if you want to know my thoughts and analysis on, let's see, I have 18 running backs fully watched and written up in this draft. I'm going to get to 24 by draft day. You can see all of the full evaluations, the grades, the comps, the strengths, the weaknesses in my draft guide. That is available on my Patreon, where you will, of course, support my channel as well and get access to all of my exclusive draft content. Once we get into the weeks leading up to the draft, I'll be doing 7-round mocks for all 8 divisions. So that's always great exclusive content over there on the full Patreon package. So there's that. You'll also get access to my Studs and Duds series that just finished with the AFC East a couple days ago. So we got all 8 divisions of Studs and Duds now available. All that great exclusive content. If you enjoy the channel, you want to show some extra support and get loads of bonus content, it's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. But with that, let's talk about my number 6 running back. It's someone that when I watched his tape, I thought there is no way I'm going to be talking about this player in this video here today, because honestly, like, full stop, he sucks. He is really bad at football right now, and that is Nick Singleton. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, unless something changes, he would be an infuriating player to give anything more than like 2 carries a game on like a jet sweep and an outside run. And when he comes in the game, the entire defense is going to be like, keep an eye on Nick Singleton. Like, they're trying to get their big explosive play here. Like, his 2025 tape is some of the worst running back tape I've ever watched. And the fact that he landed as my RB6 truly tells you how bad this running back class is. That said, he was much better in 2024. He ran with more power in 2024. And his traits are absurd. The risk starts to reach a point into the late 4th, early 5th round where I can justify the potential reward if you can coach him up as a running back. And then I also think he has enough usefulness to justify him making your roster. I think as a kick returner, he can provide value, especially inside the new rules. And honestly, his receiving stuff is pretty good. So if you want to stick him out there on 3rd downs, you can get some explosive through the screen game and get him out in space. And he's not a horrible pass blocker. So I was able to eventually talk myself into the dream of the upside, where my high-end pro comp on him is Raheem Mostert, who peaked late, which could happen with Nick Singleton, but was a borderline top 10 running back for a few years there, late in San Francisco and even in Miami. That's a possible path for Nick Singleton. But again, the kick return stuff and the receiving stuff was enough for me to be like, all right, like, if we're in the late 4th, early 5th round and I have to draft one of these guys, I'll roll the dice on Singleton now, and then when we get to the 7th round, I'll take someone down the board that's a little bit more balanced as a player, I guess. But man, let's talk about a little bit more about the issues with Nick Singleton, because that's obviously what I'm highlighting here. He has some of the worst vision I've ever seen. He's apprehensive to hit holes when he needs to. He doesn't really anticipate players from the next level. He can be way too bouncy at times because he is such a big play threat. Generally speaking, he just doesn't know where he's supposed to go. And it perpetually leads to him not being able to tap into that incredible burst and the incredible speed that he does have. It's an extremely frustrating experience. And it's not just the speed and burst. I mean, he's technically 219 pounds, but that takes me to the next point on him is he sure as hell does not play like he's 219 pounds. You compare the play strength of our last guy, Seth McGowan, to the play strength of Nick Singleton, where they're both listed at 6 foot, 219 pounds for Singleton, 223 pounds for Seth McGowan. It is night and day in terms of like who is actually like functionally strong and who has power. Nick Singleton, pretty much every time, the second he gets touched, he's going to the ground. He's got thin ankles, so guys are swiping at his legs and he goes down out in space. He doesn't power through and fight for tough yardage. And then you pair that with the fact that he does not have instincts, man. He lacks the field vision out in space to anticipate when guys are going to be hitting him. And he doesn't really have jukes or spins or any elusiveness at all. He's just trying to outrun everybody. Like every play, he gets the ball and he's like staring at the end zone and he's just like, I'm going to run that way and see what happens. And sometimes like even a blind squirrel finds a nut once a day, right? And when you draft Nick Singleton, you're hoping to cure running back blindness with him. Now, that sounds impossible to do, but one way you can do that, and this is what we saw with Raheem Mostert, put him in an outside zone system. Penn State, to be fair to Nick Singleton, was the worst possible scheme fit for him. They ran a gap north and south run scheme, and that's why Kaytron Allen really took over, right? That's what Kaytron Allen is so good at, like carving things out between the tackles. Nick Singleton is horrible at that. But if you get him running east and west on these outside zone plays that are designed to just leverage his speed against the defense, we didn't get to see a whole lot of those. They ran it occasionally, and it looked a little better for Nick Singleton. Still not great. But for me, it's that, running more tosses with him. Like, I think about him going to San Francisco, or maybe, I know the Chargers kind of loaded up their backfield, but like if someday he could be paired with Mike McDaniel when he gets a head coaching job in 2027, that kind of thing. Like someone that's really good at just getting backs into space with easy blockers out in front of him. There's so much explosive ability that's a rare trait that's hard to find, and at some point you want to draft that and see if you can make something of it. And in the meantime, if you're using him as an explosive back in the receiving game and as a kick returner, there's worse ways to spend a 4th or a 5th round pick. So I kind of talked myself into him, even though when I finished the watch on him, I was like, that's one of the worst running backs I've watched. And if not one of the worst running backs I've watched, like certainly one of the most frustrating backs I've watched. Because it's like, why and how are you not better, dude? But he did make the list at number 6, believe it or not. And at this point in the video, this is where I'm going to give you more snapshot analysis on 6 more names. And we're going to go pretty quickly through these guys because my RB7 now has a 5th round grade. The lack of depth with this class is just glaring when you talk about Nick Singleton being my RB6 and now being into 5th round grades with my RB7. Seriously, you guys, you might think I'm being dramatic or that this is just weird draft analyst talk. I don't know what the fuck happened. Like, where did all of the running backs go? My grade on Nick Singleton, with the same process, a 6.0 grade, would have landed him as RB24 last year between Ollie Gordon and Jaden Blue. Now, last year's class was really deep, and I highlighted that last year. But RB24 in last year's draft is my RB6 this year. Wild stuff. It's fascinating. Like, does this go back to the, 2019 was when the running backs don't matter narrative really picked up and all these guys were like, screw it, I'm going to be a safety or a linebacker. And ironically, this is a really good linebacker or safety draft. The wide receiver draft is really deep too. Some of these guys maybe went that route at a younger age. It's going to be fascinating to see if this was a shift in the high school recruiting landscape where maybe these running back classes aren't going to be as deep anymore. We'll see. It could also just be a complete anomaly. But with that said, I'm not going to spend that much time on our remaining backs because, like I mentioned, these guys would be in the deep 20s of last year's draft, and it's certainly in the late teens of most drafts. But let's get through it. So my number 7 running back, and certainly this deep in the draft, you start to get a lot of ties for me with my grades, where it's just a matter of stylistic preference and stuff. So this is actually my number 7A running back, Desmond Reed, out of Pittsburgh. And he was probably the only day 3 guy that I had a positive tape watching experience on, where I was like, he's really fun. I hope he's good. But he's 5'6", 174 pounds. The last time a guy like this got hyped up, it was Deuce Vaughn, who was a similar size. A lot of people liked him. I actually was pretty low on Deuce Vaughn, to be fair. I'm much higher on Desmond Reed's game than I was on Deuce Vaughn, and I think Desmond Reed has a much better chance of being something like what Tariq Cohen was for the Bears, which was a really dynamic scat back, than Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn wasn't as athletic. He went down on first contact almost every single time. Desmond Reed is a little bit more compact. I think the contact balance is a little bit better with him, but I also just think he's a more explosive player than what Deuce Vaughn was. So I think the Deuce Vaughn experience had a lot of people like writing off the 5'6", 174 pound back and be like, oh, that's never going to work. It's just anytime you have these physical outliers, you're rolling the dice for a reason. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. For every Deuce Vaughn, you might get a Tariq Cohen or a Darren Sproles. Now, Darren Sproles was like really good. But could Desmond Reed be Tariq Woolen if the size profile translates and if he can stay healthy? That's the other thing with Desmond Reed, is he's been very banged up, wasn't able to work out, but I do think in like the 5th round, he's got really good elusiveness. He's a really smooth pass catcher. I mean, if you remember Tariq Cohen, you're going to watch Desmond Reed and be like, wow, that's like the same guy. And their size profile is almost identical. Both were 5'6". Tariq Cohen was 178 pounds. Desmond Reed, 174 pounds. So the tape's actually really fun on Desmond Reed. It's just you're betting on a potentially injury-prone size outlier. But like I said, he was one of the few like really positive tape-watching experiences that I had, and that landed him as RB7. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. What the hell? Where is Jonah Coleman? Everybody says he's a 2nd-round pick. I firmly disagree that Jonah Coleman is a 2nd-round pick. I disagree that he's a 3rd or even a 4th-round pick. 5th round, you can sell me on what he does and plug that in onto a roster and find a role for him. But that's what day 3 of the draft is for with this position group. It's finding role players. And for me, that's what Jonah Coleman is. He is exclusively, to me, a goal line back and a pass protector on 3rd down. So he's 5'8", 220 pounds. So if you need a yard or 2 yards, he will get low. He can drive the pile at the goal line. Like, he provides value. He's going to convert a ton of touchdowns. It's the familiarities with A.J. Dillon and Jonah Coleman are incredible. Like, for 2 reasons. Number one, what people always said about A.J. Dillon was the joke that if you need 3 yards, he'll get you 2. If you need 8 yards, he'll get you 2. That's what A.J. Dillon was. And they're almost identical in terms of their athletic profile, in the sense that they feel like Jonah Coleman and A.J. Dillon, they are stuck in quicksand in the backfield. Like, their ability to get to the line, to like make guys miss in the backfield, to hit a hole with any sense of burst where you can actually generate speed to power and bully through arm tackles and stuff. There's just absolutely no explosiveness with someone like Jonah Coleman. And I think you guys can tell, like, with my rankings, like 2 through 4, like, I don't need you to be a freak athlete, but I do need a baseline of movement skills. And Jonah Coleman just doesn't have that. And I also just don't think his vision is all that good, because I think not only is he physically slow, but I thought he was really apprehensive and tried to be too patient at times. And it was just a really ugly combination of him just kind of standing in the backfield, not seeing it, and then getting swarmed by defenders and him not being able to do anything about it. And I was just like, you can't give this guy the ball unless it's literally just like, hey, we're in goal line, we need a yard, put the crown of your helmet into our center's ass and get us a yard. Like, that's what he's going to do for you. Everything else was an extremely underwhelming experience on Jonah Coleman. My pro comp on him is Samaje Perine, who, look, he's had a nice career, and I think Jonah Coleman could have an 8-year career just like Samaje Perine's had, doing exactly the same thing, which is you're a third running back as a short yardage presence, and when we need a back to not let our quarterback get killed, you can step in and do that. And honestly, the A.J. Dillon comp is like perfect too. It's just A.J. Dillon's 250 pounds at like 6'2". Coleman's just a condensed version of that player. But the other thing with A.J. Dillon was and Samaje Perine actually, is they're actually really strangely good, like, pass catching backs. All of these guys tie together, and Coleman does have that. He's got smooth hands, and if you're flipping the ball out to him in space where he actually has a couple steps to get moving, and it's a slot corner or an outside corner trying to tackle him, he's pretty good out in space as like a dump down threat. So strictly speaking, as a third down back, he has a lot of value there. He's not particularly explosive, but again, Samaje Perine, A.J. Dillon, that's a 5th round running back for me. And that's where I landed on Jonah Coleman. And then number 9 for me is our number 7C running back. So these three are all, the same grade, the 5.95 mark. Mike Washington out of Arkansas. He's this year's Isaac Guerendo. You guys remember Guerendo a couple years ago. And to be fair, Guerendo went to the perfect spot. He went to the Niners and got to play in that outside zone system that makes his vision deficiencies and his I'll call it athletic deficiencies in the sense that he is a straight line speed athlete. He had some good games with the Niners, and that's very much what I see with Mike Washington, a guy that is big, 6'1", 223 pounds, ran a 4.33 40. If you can get him on one track in a straight line, he is that speed train runner. But as we know, it's much easier said than done, especially for a back like Isaac Guerendo, like Mike Washington, that just doesn't have very good vision, has very stiff hips, and the weird thing with Mike Washington is 95% of the time his feet are very heavy, and it's just rare for you to see Mike Washington get to tap into that speed train running style. And when you only get that 7 times in a season, what else does he bring to the table? And it's really not a whole lot. And I tweeted this out on him a few days ago that I don't know that I've ever written down so many weaknesses on a running back as I've written on Mike Washington. Like, the strength speaks for itself. To have that speed at that size, there's an understanding for the appeal to it. But I'm just going to read off my weaknesses real quick. Heavy feet to elude tackles or change lanes when he gets stuck around the line of scrimmage. High-cut athlete whose legs make for an easy target for tacklers. Often apprehensive with his vision to press the hole and invites defenders to get a hand on him before he can get rolling upfield. Inconsistent processing speed to read out his blocks and pick the right lane. Lacks creative vision to see bounce out lanes where he could better take advantage of his speed if he saw them more often. Struggles to stop and start and doesn't make many defenders miss out in open space. Lower half is slightly thinner, reducing his potential for contact balance and leg drive and power. Was plagued by fumbling issues, putting 7 balls in the turf in his last 2 seasons on just over 300 attempts. He's a late bloomer, which I don't say for every position, but at running back, I think the expectations change given the shorter shelf life that these guys have in the NFL and the ease of the position. You want to see things click for them at an earlier age. So he's a late bloomer who was just okay in his first 4 seasons at Buffalo and New Mexico State. And he doesn't have a great projection in the receiving game really at all in terms of hands, route running, any of it. So he does one thing extremely well, and that's be that slashing, one-cut, outside zone runner. But even with Isaac Guerendo, who showed he can play in the NFL, was very quickly phased out in San Francisco because he was so limited. I see a very similar player. I think Washington has a little bit better acceleration than Guerendo had, so that works in his favor. But I think Guerendo had better contact balance than Mike Washington had as well. So Washington got a 5th round grade for me, very much like a project day 3 high upside guy. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If he ends up a guy you can give 8 touches to, and hopefully he breaks one of those free and you can turn him loose on the defense every few weeks, I think that's great. And I guess I should say this because I know what's coming. There are specifically like 4 plays, and I did 4 Mike Washington games, full games on him, and then I watched all of his explosive runs. There are probably about 3 to 4 plays that you can put in a cut up, and they are plays of Mike Washington like dancing around defenders in the backfield and not fitting the description of what I just read to you. And those specific plays make you go, maybe he does have lighter feet and is a better athlete than I'm giving him credit for. But when you sit there and watch the tape, every single time you press play on a new snap, you lose the confidence that guy's in there. Like, it's good to know that maybe you can get that guy that's a little bit more shifty and creative and elusive, but you really got to squint to find it. And the vast majority of his plays, you see a guy that just can't really move like that. So it's weird. And if you want to bet on those 3 or 4 plays that you can get those out way more often, go for it. I'm going to let someone else draft Mike Washington. Then we get to 10 through 13, and these guys are all pretty similar. They all have true day 3, 5th to 7th round grades. I think all these guys are draftable, but none of them, I think, have the traits to really be starters. And I'm going to go through these guys pretty quickly here. So my number 10 running back, or my number 10A, is Noah Whittington out of Oregon. Of this group, I like him the most, obviously. And if there is a Kyle Monangai in this draft, someone that goes in the 7th round and surprises you, I think it's probably Noah Whittington. But like we said, Kyle Monangai was in a loaded running back draft last year. I liked Monangai a good bit better. I had a 6.15 grade on him with a 4th to a 5th round grade relative to last year's draft. But with that grade, he would have landed as my RB4. He I had the same grade on Kyle Monangai as I did on Katron Allen. So he just went a lot later because of the class he was in. But in terms of what Noah Whittington is good at, and could he maybe be someone that comes in as a late round pick and surprises you as like an efficient starter for somebody? Maybe with Noah Whittington, like, he's really stocky. He's got great vision. He's a 6-year player, like, very high floor in that sense. The athletic profile couldn't really be any worse. We don't have a 40-yard dash from him, but he's probably in the 4.6s. Not a ton of burst, really no shiftiness, but like, he's stocky. He can kind of sort his way through the tackles and find some tough yards. There is like one run against Minnesota where he's swarmed by the defense and he just keeps churning his feet and he pulls through the pile and breaks off to the races for like a 50-yard touchdown. Like, there's a little bit of that like chip on his shoulder nastiness to him that Kyle Monangai had last year. I just don't think he's as athletic as Monangai, and that's saying something because Monangai's not a great athlete either. But I don't hate him, Noah Whittington. Then you got Kalen Black, very similar idea, 5'10", 211 pound, kind of short striding, contact balance back with very good vision, a 6th year player as well. Him and Noah Whittington are, again, these grades are extremely tight. I lean the preference towards Whittington being the better, giving him the nod. But I think Kalen Black, who was a big part of that championship Indiana run game, I think you know what you're getting with him. Absolutely. So I think he's draftable to be just like an innings-eating backup running back in the NFL. Then you got Roman Hemby, also out of Indiana. Different style than his teammate Kalen Black and Noah Whittington before him, but I think the same idea where he's a backup running back in the NFL. He's a different type of athlete. He's more of a long strider with a little bit more speed and maybe a little bit more burst into the hole. He's more of like a dependable one-cut runner. There's not a ton of shiftiness or creativity or a lot of explosiveness either. If he was a faster player, I would like him more. But he's going to trust his blocks. He's going to make one cut. He's going to go. He's a guy that you can plug in to churn out the end of ball games, to maybe get a spot start if your running back is injured and you need someone that just can read out blocks and fight for tough yards, make a cut and go and not cost you the game. Hemby only fumbled twice in his entire college career on 710 carries. Like he's not going to turn the ball over. He produced pretty well at Maryland. He ran for over 1,000 yards for Indiana. Dependable, low upside back that produced in the Big Ten. It's hard to hate him. It's hard to love him. And then the last guy I'm going to shout out here is Jamari Taylor out of Virginia. Another 6-year guy, similar in the sense he's 5'10", 200 pounds. He's got decent speed. He's probably got the best speed out of this cluster of guys. But a similar style to Roman Hemby, where he trusts his vision. He's a one-cut runner, not going to bully through a lot of tackles or have crazy shiftiness or anything like that. But a dependable backup running back out of Virginia who had a really strong final season. So, man, there's your 2026 NFL running back class. I think you can tell, especially if you watched last year's running back class, like it's just different this year. Like I said, if you're in a fantasy dynasty league, I hope you took a running back last year or you have a top 5 pick to get either Jeremiah Love or maybe Jadarian Price, maybe Emmett Johnson, and then it's probably it in terms of starters in this draft class. If there's anybody else that I didn't talk about here today, you can check out, like I said, on my Patreon. There's still about 6 names that I want to get to, but I have 18 overall players written up, so I'll just say it, like the other 5 guys that I have watched: Adam Randall, Robert Henry Jr., Eli Heidenreich, Le'Veon Moss, Damon Claiborne. I've got those write-ups done on my Patreon. About 6 or 7 names left to watch after that, but not expecting a whole lot of guys to break through from my remaining list. I think this class is what it is at this point. I hope you found this video enjoyable nonetheless. Please do hit that like button if you did. If you enjoyed the analysis, make sure you subscribe. Also got to shout out my TikTok. Just search that franchise guy on TikTok. My wife is building shorts and having a ton of fun doing some bonus content in the shorts space. So if you're on TikTok, you can find me there. But that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching. Our next position group is either going to be tight ends or interior defensive linemen. Those will be our next 2, regardless. And I should be live on Sunday evening for a mock draft, so that will be fun as well. Until then, though, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.